Hey everyone, I'm Megan Frame, and as we've been talking about, one of my core responsibilities is, in its simplistic form, is to get our mission from 10 million to reach 10 million Georgians, about 22 million acres of managed forest. As you see on the map, the red areas show the pockets of highly urbanized areas. 75.1% of Georgians' populations are in those areas. One thing remains throughout the entire state is that we are all Georgians. And something that we have talked about a lot is that within this room, we know the value that the forestry industry in Georgia brings to the state of Georgia. But what is vital to the forestry industry is that we educate the 5.2 million Georgians who live in Atlanta so that they can make that connection when an Amazon box arrives weekly at their door, so that they know who made that box possible. It is important that when we also look in other industries, that other people want to know where their food came from, what farm that tomato was grown, where it was. And I think that it is just as important that they know, that all Georgians know exactly how their box was produced and how it ended up on their doorstep. The foundation has partnered with Jackson Spalding, an acclaimed marketing group based out of Atlanta. When you fly around the world, they support you through their connections with Delta. When you go and enjoy a Coke, they also do their marketing for Coca-Cola. When you enjoy peanuts and Cracker Jacks with the Braves, they've also done their marketing. And we have entrusted them to guide us through this process as we elevate the foundation to share this mission. Jackson Spalding has taken on the mission of these 22 million acres of managed forest and the 5,000 plus products they produce for every average consumer to pushing it out. And there is no better champion than the people in this room for our mission. And that is what we are pushing out. So we hope that through our communications efforts, that in the simplistic form of making sure that you're engaged with us online, that you know that you can follow the foundation on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and know what we're doing and how we are going to be continuously touching 10 million Georgians and enriching the lives of our students through education. Thank you.
Well, I think you can see that we're in some very good hands here with the panelists here on stage and everyone working so hard towards the goal that we all want to realize, and that is to get the word out to all Georgians how important our industry is to them. So we're going to, well, first of all, let's give a hand to everybody here that has given this presentation. Thank you. Well done, well done. Andres, I'd like to start with you and simply by asking, why is this work so important and how does it drive value back not only to our industry, but to all of Georgia? And more specifically, how is the foundation structured to align with the association core principles?
Sure, yeah. I'll start with the core principles. Thank you for the question. When we started thinking about the reworking or I guess re-energizing the foundation, we knew that the things that we wanted to do, we couldn't do just through dues membership, if you will, through the association. What it takes to reach 10 million people, what it takes to educate and create leaders, what it takes to do sustained policy studies, not on one-off projects, but over time, was going to take a lot more. And if we raised our dues to the level that it would take to do that, we'd probably lose a lot of members. So part of that was looking at, okay, well, we need to have a lot more financial resources. Well, part of the challenge with a lot of foundations is foundations are parts of other things. The University of Georgia has its own foundation, for example. But if not managed correctly, they can get away from you. They can become something that you never intended them to do. They can become something that's working against you sometimes. And that's not where we wanted to be. So we thought long and hard, and we said, what were the things that absolutely we had to do right? And the day that we stopped doing those, we should shut the doors at GFA. We don't need a forestry association anymore. What would happen if, and what that came down to was our core principles. Our core principles of private property rights, our core principle of healthy markets and our core principle of sensible taxes and regulation. Those are the things that built forestry in this state. That ability to own your own property, that ability to sell timber, that ability to not be taxed or regulated into oblivion, that's what created. And so our foundation points to those same core principles, but in a little bit different way. You know, the work that we do through the association is really geared towards government affairs and lobbying, but the foundation's work is really geared more towards education. And if you think about it, lobbying is something we have to do. You know, it could be something that happens in 5 minutes in the Capitol that changes our world. But it's something that you do today. It's something that's very tactical. It's very, you know, from today to the next maybe 1 or 2 years. But when you think about educating, how long does it take you to educate your kid? Well, those of us who do it right, you probably never stop. You know, your child might be 40, 50 years old, and you're still hopefully imparting some kind of knowledge on them. And you know, I still look to my parents for advice and help and guidance. And I'm 41 years old. So the fact of the matter is, the work of education is not a 1 to 2 year or today issue. It's something that we've got to do sustainably over generations. It'll take an entire generation for us to really effectively move that needle. And that's why it's so important for us to make sure that we're well invested, that we're well resourced. And that's why we asked you here today, Chuck, because we think that what we're doing is a big deal. We think that when we do this right, it changes, we are leading for the entire country. Georgia is not only the #1 forestry state, but we're the #1 forestry leadership state in the nation. And that's important, because the country needs us to be that, right? The #1 forestry state needs the #1 forestry association.
Absolutely.
And that's why, for us, we have been able to raise several $1 million already. And that's a big deal. We went to Washington. I'll shorten my question here in a minute, but we went to Washington, D.C. Last week, and we met with several of our national organizations, and 2 of them just said, Andres, we can't believe what you've done. They were just astounded. And it marks the fact that this leadership, this type of champion for forestry is needed. In a country that's got a lot of noise going on politically, a lot of noise with competing industries, with a lot of noise with other folks. We heard it yesterday from Bruce Westerman. You know, petroleum and chemicals and automotive industries that are smaller than us combined have way more lobbyists in D.C. than we do. So there's a good opportunity for us to continue to make sure, as long as we're focused on those core principles, and as long as we focus on these 3 centers, we believe that we can move the needle. And if we do it over a sustained period of time, we will have every Georgian in this state will know we're the #1 forestry state in the nation, and they will support us, at least in how they choose to live their lives, choosing paper over plastic, choosing wood over steel, choosing to say, yes, it's okay to cut a tree because we're going to plant more of them. We have plenty of landowners out there that want to plant more. Those are the types of things that sometimes we don't get today. If we listen closely, we don't hear that as loud as we need to. So let's elevate that voice so it's not just foresters and people in forestry saying that. Let's make sure our neighbors down the street are the people saying that.
Can I get an amen? Thank you, Andres. Thank you so much. Just to touch a little bit on when you talked about incentives and regulation, rolling back to regulations and all. We had a great meeting at Earl and Wanda Barr's place not long ago. Andres was there. Maybe some of you were also there with Secretary of Agriculture Sonny Perdue, and also with Administrator EPA Scott Pruitt. And that was a big part of the discussion, and I think hopefully we will see some rollback of regulation. You know, we want to make sure we're doing the right thing. I think we can all agree upon that, but we also want the freedom and ability to do what we need to do for our markets and for growing this timber that is so important to all of us. And very quickly, Wanda gave a great little talk at that meeting about education. We're going to get into education now, but she's been a great champion for all of us for education here in Georgia. So thank you, Wanda. All right, I'd like to go to Aaron now, and I'd like to ask you about, when we're talking about education, thinking about education, what do you think are the best ways that we can engage teachers and make them want to teach about forestry?
It's a great question. And I should say, I would be remiss if I didn't say that Wanda has been a mentor to me for many years and a great friend. She probably should be the one up here talking, but I did take some time to talk with her this morning. But as I served as Governor Perdue, now Secretary Perdue's policy director for many years, Wanda served as the chair of the State Board of Education, and my area of focus, of course, was education. And so have worked with her for many, many years. Thank you for the question. And, you know, as a former classroom teacher, it's really important that we develop resources that are relevant to what teachers are expected to be teaching already. We live in a standards-based world in education today, and so there are specific standards that teachers are expected to teach, and those are the same things that we expect students at the end of a school year to have learned. And if we don't embed this into those core standards, into that core content that teachers are teaching, then it's just we could create incredible resources. They could be, you know, fancy and shiny and all of those things, but they're not going to be used if they're not embedded into that core curriculum, because teachers just do not have the time to do that, and the task before them is such an important task, and teaching those standards is so important that we have to embed it. So to me, that's the biggest thing. They have to be relevant, and they have to be easy for teachers to use. You know, we don't want this to be something that's going to take an inordinate amount of time for them to prepare or to study. It needs to be something that's there and ready to use and already aligned to the standards that they're teaching. And if we do that and we make them engaging materials that students are going to enjoy, which is pretty easy, right? We have a content that is interesting and it's engaging, and once we connect it to students for some of those ways we've already talked about, that piece is easy. Getting their attention and their interest won't be difficult, but we have to make the resources really easy for teachers to use.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the tools that we do have. PLT, which I'm sure most everybody here is familiar with. What you may not know is that PLT is shifting now from being under the umbrella of the American Forest Foundation to SFI. And you know, hopefully that transition will be very easy, and it will go well, and that hopefully PLT will even grow further. But how do you feel about that program in our schools here in Georgia?
Andres or Amber, somebody else may have something to add to this, but from everything I can tell, it's a great program. And for teachers that are going through the Teacher Conservation Workshop and have the time to devote to that and the interest in doing that, it's an incredible program. And you know, the goal here in this work is just to reach more teachers, so that we in turn reach more students. For all the policy reasons you're talking about, whether that's tax policy or, you know, all those things, the students who are in school today are going to be making those policy decisions down the road. And so, you know, I'm actually astonished at how many people, as I've just been doing this work, you know, I'll just have a conversation with people about, did you know that Georgia has the largest forest industry? And a lot of people don't know that. I mean, I think to your point about getting this message out and making this something that Georgians know and understand and are proud of and want to protect is really, it's imperative on all of us to do that. And it's not just our students that don't understand it. And it's you know, it's not just the future generation. It's the current generation of leaders. I don't know if they understand it to the degree that we need them to. But absolutely, I think it's a great program, and this would be a supplement to that that's aimed at reaching more teachers.
I mean, because I think it's great anytime we can get those kids out into forestry world, so to speak, as you mentioned, whether it's a mill, whether it's a tree farm, whether it, you know, a pellet factory, whatever it could be, so they could learn more. But when you can't get them out, let's bring the classroom to them, right? So that we're constantly pushing that agenda and getting them to learn about how important it is to our state, how important it is to our lives, right? And I'm glad you mentioned GPB. I'd like to tell everyone here, some of you already know this, but some of you may not know this, that I have a new program called America's Forests with Chuck Lavelle. We did the first episode in Oregon. It ran here on GPB recently, about the last a month or so ago. Hopefully it'll rerun again. We're shooting a second episode coming up early next month in Colorado. Our hope is to get a full 13-part series for this, but it takes a lot of legwork, and of course it takes money as well. So I'd just like everyone here to be aware of it, and if you get a chance, if you haven't seen it, you can go to a website, americasforestwithchucklavelle.com. Pretty easy to remember, no apostrophes, all lowercase, and you can watch the first episode there. So we're hoping to help educate not only people here in Georgia, but all over the country about how important that is.
I say that I have seen it, and thank you so much for doing that. It's exactly the type of leadership that that propels us forward. And if you haven't seen it, it's awesome. So we'll make sure that everyone here at the conference gets a link to be able to see that online.
Great. Thank you, Andres. All right, well, let's move on, and I'd like to talk to Ember about the national message, and has a strong focus on rural America, but how can we reach the urban area that we've been talking about, the 5.5 million people that are there in the metro Atlanta area, because, you know, we can all sing Kumbaya, but we need to get those folks up there to realize how important this is to all of Georgia.
Thank you, Chuck. That is a good question. So, coming from a poultry farm in rural Georgia, and, you know, fast forward in my work when at economic development, you know, when I came over to the foundation, I thought, man, the only thing we ever talked about at economic development was the exports of wood pellets, and there's so much that goes into the pieces of that. How can we be better champions? How can we be a bigger voice? How can we be a part of the conversation? And there is an opportunity to grab a hold of these reins of rural America and the conversation around rural economic development, and how do we take rural economic development and connect it with the urban parts of the state. Well, you know, we've kind of knocked that around in-house, and really Forestry's been doing it the whole time. We're producing products that connects people. It doesn't matter where you live. We are rural America, but we're also urban America, because every single part of what our industry does connects people. We just have to do a better job through our messaging of making sure that people understand that story. And that's what the foundation is really here and charged to do. And it's going to take, yes, educating the youngest of learners, but it also is, how do we create a pipeline of workers as well that can feed into our workforce? How can we continue to sustain the #1 forestry state in the nation? And that's because we've got to have buy-in all across the state. And so elevating that message that, yes, we are rural America, we are economic development, we are the key to a lot of the opportunities in these communities all across the state, that you say we need opportunities. Well, we are providing lots of opportunities. And the big key message of that is, the more the urban populations realize how much they depend on this product to be grown and be able to be planted in rural parts of our state, I think the bigger picture of things is that they will realize how much they're connected as well, and that people are connected through those products. So I think that through our communications and messaging, it's like we keep saying, we just have to be the ones telling our story. You know, we have to be the ones that are carrying that flag, but we have found out, Wesley and Robert, that has worked on it for so long for us at the Capitol, that if we're not all in there together and on the same message, and through education, Wanda, if we're not there all in the same message, then they can quickly divide us, and they can quickly say this group's not organized. They can quickly say, well, yes, you're the second largest industry in the state, but, and people will run laps around us. And so the quicker we can get our message out, the quicker that you all can take this champion of forestry mentality out into your communities, the better that we all can be in telling our story as a group.
Excellent. And on that same subject, I want to talk to Megan about the same thing, and ask her, what are some of the ways that the foundation's communications and marketing can help engage those people, especially those that are in those metropolitan areas, and how can we get that outreach that we need to?
Absolutely. Thank you. So something that we have seen over and over again is that there is nothing greater than a face-to-face contact. And so as we're looking to see more and more, I am also new to forestry, and I am the target audience. I live in Atlanta, and I want to know how my Amazon box got to my door. So and I'm going to challenge each of you. I want to know your stories. I want to know your stories so that I can push it out to the 5 million individuals living in Atlanta. And I would love if you want to reach out to me anytime. I would love to sit down with you and learn more about you so that we can do that effectively. So it's more just about everyone wants to know where their items are coming from, how can they connect to the things in their home, to what they're eating at dinner, what they're serving their friends, and the house that they're serving them in. And so I think the story is just the absolute most important way that we can connect through the foundation.
All right, very good. All right, well, I guess we can open it up now for some questions, but I would like to just say before we do that, I loved Andres' analogy of the house and the different rooms in the house. I mean, I think it's so true, you know, whether you're a logger, whether you're a tree farmer like us, or a mill owner, whatever it might be, we all have a different story, but we need to be unified in that story, and I think that goes to the communication factor and how we present ourselves educationally to teachers, to children, and to the general public. So let's bear that in mind. You know, one of the most useful experiences I ever had was going through a media training, and that's basically where an evil man or a woman gets you in a room and starts grilling you about how to articulate yourself when they say, oh, so Chuck, you're a tree farmer, you cut trees, you murder the trees, that's what you do, isn't it? You know, and you have to be able to retort that and come back and say, you know what, we do cut trees, and we're proud that our lumber goes to build somebody's first home. You know, we're proud that we plant more trees than we grow, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's so important that we all know how to articulate those messages. So I hope in the work that we do going forward, we can maybe even offer some of that to those that want to volunteer to be on your local television or to do interviews, radio, media, whatever it might be. So right now, let's open it up for questions. Anybody have burning questions on their mind? Come on now. Don't be shy.
You did such a good job.
Yes, there's Jim, yeah.
Andres, I think it would be useful if you explain to people why the foundation as opposed to GFA and what the foundation adds and how important that is.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So the question was why the foundation as opposed to GFA, and part of it gets back to, there's multiple factors. Part of it gets back to scale. You know, the amount of money it takes to do the things that we want to do. You can't really get that through the foundation, through the association, through dues. You can get it through the foundation, and it's tax advantaged as well. The other component is the longevity component of it. The importance of us being able to reach, to do this over an extended period of time is also the other component of it as well. There's some legal components to it. Of course, the association can lobby, the foundation can't. So there's another reason why we wanted to be able to have that distinction there from the legal perspective. But I think the other component of this too, as well, is that there may be a name change in our future. But you know, the foundation has been around for a while, and when people think of the Georgia Forestry Foundation, there can be confusion. You know, I can't tell you how many people that are members of the Forest Landowners Association that I've met, and they're like, "Yeah, I'm a member of GFA." I was like, "No, that's actually a different group." or all the phone calls we get about burn permits from the Georgia Forestry Commission, right? So there's the amount of confusion out there can be considerable. We really wanted to position the foundation to be in a place where it could kind of have a space of its own, to be able to operate effectively in a kind of a high growth mode, but always kind of being surrogate back to the association. And we've built in a lot of fail-safes in governance as well as on financial components that keep the foundation always aligned to the association. And that was part of the wisdom of some of the GFA leadership we had last year on our executive committee that really pushed hard for that. They wanted to make sure that our foundation always stays true to our core principles and always supports the overall mission of the association.
Very good. Yes, sir.
As someone who's had some involvement with the foundation in the past, when I heard the numbers yesterday, 3 million or whatever, I thought I was hearing things. Unbelievable. Can you talk about it?
Sure. I'll use the microphone. here. I've been on my feet a lot, so I needed to stand up because the more I sit down, the sleepier I get. So these conferences take a little bit out of you. Thanks for asking that question. We've been very, very, very fortunate that, when we go to talk to people about these things, they get it. If you're in business, if you're a family-owned business and you're worried about who the next generation is going to own your land or own your mill, and you see that the city's grown up around you, and you see and you hear what people say when they go by that log deck and they see all those trees there, or you hear about challenges selling your lumber because people don't want to use that. Business understands, I need a Center for Forest Policy Studies. When you see that our education initiatives, while they've been very good and very well intentioned, but can they keep up with a population that's growing and 1.7 million school children? Think about that. What's the average size of a classroom? Like 25 or something? So divide 1.7 million by 25. That's the number of individual visits that you'd have to get all those kids out to your forest, to your timberland. It's impossible to do. I don't think there's that many school buses in this state to get all those kids out. And so when we started thinking about just the scale of this, and when you're thinking about it from the education perspective, it was really, you have to take a different approach. And so people from the education side, they get it, right? Yeah, we need to have virtual. We need to have all these other things that we can do. So to answer your question, I can be a little persuasive, I guess, but the point, I think the point that's so important, and let me go back to leadership too, one more. Companies, and I heard it every day at Weyerhaeuser, who's going to be our next generation? Baby boomers are retiring every day. Who's going to lead us into the future? Who even knows anything, how to talk to a super left environmentalist? Who even knows how to talk to folks that aren't sure if cutting a tree is okay, but they know that they need forest products? That's all those things are things that I've heard and we've heard collectively through our careers. And we designed a program that answered those questions. My entire life, I've heard we have an awesome story. Not entire life, my entire professional career, I've heard that we have an awesome story to tell, but we don't tell it well enough. Well, we designed a program that fixes that. It'll take 10 years for us to see massive impact, but we're already seeing impact from just the initial stuff that we've done this year. And people who have the ability to give from $5 to $1 million are on board, because they understand that a Georgia that continues to add population will one day create, if we don't turn that, we'll have a situation that we won't be able to control. It'll look a little more like California than it looks like Georgia. And that's not me throwing red flags and alarm buttons. That's just the reality of a highly urbanized population that gets all their information through a phone, who all they see is an interstate, a city, a school, and maybe a church on Sunday. They're disconnected from where the things that they need for survival. So we know that we designed something to help address that, and that's why I say that some of these things make people uncomfortable, but it's also a part of being a leader, and like I said, the #1 forestry state in the nation deserves the #1 forestry association in the nation, and we're dedicated to leading and solving these challenges, and that convinces people to give.
Can I get another amen? Thank you, Andres. And it's so true. $5, $10, $20, $1 million. Everybody can put a little something into the pot, and I think it's so important that we all participate in some way so that we can grow this thing into what it really needs to be. And it's already, as was mentioned, it's pretty remarkable that we have how much in the foundation now?
We've raised somewhere between $3.5 and $4 million in the past 6 months.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's just incredible.
And I think it's also, well, I lost my train of thought, I'm sorry.
All right, well, listen, we're getting almost to the end of time, but do we have any other comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
Do you have talking points on your website that we could talk to people, for those of us who don't go to leadership school? And can you have talking points that are toward different perspectives? Because there are the people who don't understand kind of regulation is terrible, and yet there are regulations that can be beneficial. So
Yeah.
I would love to see talking points that we can access from the website, and I assume it'd be the Forestry Foundation website as opposed to.
Megan, you want to address
Are
that?
they already there?
They're not there, and that's what we're in the process of doing with Jackson Spalding. And they have taken a lot of time listening to Andres, listening to Ember, and getting a feel for the forestry industry in Georgia and exactly what you're talking about. They want to make it as common sense as possible so that we can tell a friend who's never heard about the forestry industry. And that's exactly, I'm so glad that we're obviously on the same page with that. Thank you.
That's a great idea. We should get that up and running as soon as we can, but to make sure that all those points are there, and as you say, from different perspectives, I think that's great. Anybody else? Comments? Questions? All right, well, first of all, give this panel a hand again, please. Thank you, everyone, for your perspective.
And we also have such a special guest in Chuck Lavelle. So we happened to just put a piano on stage. And I don't know if you noticed, but would you please do us the honors of serenading us into our closing statements?
I got to sing for my supper again.
Please. Thank you.
Okay. Are we on here? Yeah. Okay. Can y'all hear me? Is this on now? Okay, great. Well. Station to get me a train, climb aboard and ride again, just to climb aboard and ride around. I might get off in Memphis town, Memphis town, Memphis town. All trains going to Memphis town, shoveling the coal and see the wheels go round. Everybody going to Memphis town. I said, conductor, where the trains are going? I want to go see that guy of mine. And he answered me with the railroad frown, said, all trains going to Memphis town, Memphis town, Memphis town. All trains going to Memphis town, shoveling the coal and see the wheels go round. Everybody going to Memphis town. I said, what's doing down old Memphis way? All trains are going there today. And they said, hey son, there's a jubilee. And Memphis town's the only place to be now. Memphis town, Memphis town. All trains going to Memphis town, shoveling the coal and see the wheels go round. Everybody going to Memphis town. Station man, where's my train? He said, I never knowed you on the train. I said, you better answer me, I'm gonna smack you down. All trains going to Memphis town. Goodbye, folks, I'm on my way. I see you on that judgment day. And I got my ticket, and here's my train. Going down to Memphis, see that good gal again. Memphis town, Memphis town. All trains going to Memphis town, shoveling the coal, see the wheels go round. Everybody going down to Memphis town.
Champions of Forestry could sound like that.
So this is a special bowl made out of wood from Georgia, which is hard to find. Not the wood, but the bowl. But this is actually made by Georgia Correctional Industry, so prisoners.
Wow.
And this is a big part of what Governor Deal's been trying to do with wood in particular, to make sure that those prisoners have skills that they can then go apply out in the workforce. So it's a special bowl, they're hard to get, and it's kind of neat, but anyway.
Thank you so much, Andre.
Thank you so much for joining us today.